Hey, welcome everyone. Let me check my. Okay, yeah, we're good. Just had to check the audio. Welcome. It's Ask a Lawyer Live, your Tuesday edition with David Brannen. I'm a lawyer here at Resolute Employment and Disability Lawyers. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2-year change of definition of disability within long-term disability plans. We'll talk a bit about what leads up to the change of definition, what it is, and what you can expect after the change of definition. As always, I'll do some question and answer after we're done, and I'm happy to answer any question people have around disability or employment law topics. What else do I want to talk about before we get started? I guess tomorrow I'll be talking. What is my topic tomorrow? Oh, the difference between being an independent contractor and an employee, and the implications that can have for when you're terminated from employment. Okay, let's get on with this. So as always, I'm going to do a little restart here because this part's going to be clipped out for a standalone video. Let me dive in here. Oh, and please put your questions in the chat as we go along. I can answer them at the end once we get through the presentation. I know at least one person had requested this presentation last week, so hopefully that person's here and we can dive in once we get going. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Lawyer Live. I'm David Brannen, disability lawyer and founder here at Resolute Employment and Disability Lawyers. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be diving into a topic that causes a lot of anxiety, the 2-year change of definition of disability. This is one of the most important turning points in any disability claim and often catches people off guard. People are worried about a lot of anxiety about will they get to stay on benefits? Will benefits be cut off? And so today we'll talk about what to expect, what you can do to increase your chances of staying on benefits, and how to prepare yourself if there is a claim denial. I'll give you some real life examples. I have changed some of the facts around a little bit just to maintain people's privacy, and hopefully that will help you better understand the process. After the presentation, there will be a Q&A. If you're watching this on the recorded video after, you can always just throw your questions down in the comments, and sometimes I'm able to answer them. Let's dive in here. Okay. So let's start with the basics. When you are first approved for long-term disability benefits, the insurance company uses the own occupation test or standard. That means you're considered disabled if you can't do your regular work at your kind of regular job. But at the 2-year mark, once you've been approved on benefits for 2 years, there is a shift to a stricter standard, which is called the any occupation definition. At that point, you can only remain on benefits if you're unable to do any job that's reasonably suited to you based on your education, experience, and training. Now, it doesn't literally mean any job. So just keep that in mind. It's not literally any job. You don't have to take a job that is substantially lower in pay from what you had before. It must make sense for your background and your income level at the time you went on disability. However, the burden of proof is higher, and it does open up a broader range of employment that you may have to consider beyond what your regular employment used to be. So, for example, I've got an example here. We had a client, about 45 years old, was a truck driver with chronic back pain and depression. Now, at the 2-year point, this guy got cut off, and they argued that, well, yeah, they agreed he couldn't be a truck driver. He should be able to work in a call center or an office setting, answering phones and this type of thing, being almost like a dispatcher. They gave different kind of examples. We showed that the physical limitations made sitting for prolonged periods just as big a problem in that type of work environment as it would with his truck driving. And also that he had kind of an anxiety, he had kind of anxiety as well as depression that made kind of working with the public not feasible at all. So we were able to get his claim approved by focusing on those limitations with the proposed jobs that they were giving him. Oh, I missed my slides here. Sorry about that. Okay. So there's a lot of myths around what the change of definition means. First of all, some people and sometimes doctors, unfortunately, think that people have to be completely bedridden in order to be able to continue to get benefits after the 2-year change of definition. That is not true. Secondly, many people think the insurer is just looking for any kind of excuse to deny your claim. Well, that can be true to some extent. They are bound by the terms of the policy, so they can't just cut people off without some shred of evidence against you. So just that is also something there that, it's not that they can just do anything. They are also bound by the policy. Now, you don't have to prove that you can never work again. The test is whether you're like reasonably able to work in a job that's suitable for your education, training, experience, physical abilities, limitations. It's not just whether you can do some parts of a job. You have to be able to do the substantial duties of a job that would enable you to be employed in the function, in the competitive work economy. All right. Let's move on here. Oh, there's one last point there. Sorry. It's important that the job that you are looking at after the change of definition, it does have to have comparable earnings. Now, some insurance policies will define what that means. Sometimes they will say that it has to be, 50%, 60% of your pre-disability earnings. Some will be kind of silent on it. And if it's silent, they don't say anything about it. The courts will kind of come to their own conclusions based on the case. But many policies will have in there what the income threshold is. That income threshold is what defines the comparable earnings. So just for example, if your pre-disability income was, say, $70,000, let's pick an easier, $100,000, just to make my math simple here, and you were earning $100,000 gross income pre-disability, and your change of definition to any occupation had a 60% earnings threshold, that would mean that you would continue to be disabled from any occupation as long as you did not have the capacity to work in a job where you could earn $60,000 a year or more, because $60,000 is 60% of $100,000, which was your pre-disability income. All right. So what happens in the lead up to the change of definition? In the lead up around around months 18 to 20, it's not written in stone. I've seen it happen as early as month 12, so halfway in, but definitely by months 18 to 20, you can see an uptick in activity from the insurance company. You may be asked to complete questionnaires. There might be functional assessments they're doing. They can order independent medical exams. There also could be various rehab consultants. Some of this stuff can be happening behind the scenes. So it may be just like you're doing more detailed interviews on the phone with your claims manager. They're asking a lot about your education, your work history, because they're compiling that information to give to vocational assessors who will complete transferable skills assessments and vocational assessments. Some of these assessments can be done without the professionals talking to you. They're not as good, but that can be done. And often that is done. Things like transferable skills assessments, they're more focused on, as long as they know what your profile is, they can kind of do a preliminary test that way. All right. So let's take a look at the next slide here. Okay, warning signs. Yes. So red flags. You can tell that the insurer is getting into this review when there's like a sudden increase in communications. I guess I'm kind of repeating myself here a little bit. Sudden increase in communications are going to be an example that they are ramping up for this. Asking to apply for CPP disability, that often happens in the lead up as well. Now, it's common. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be approved beyond the change of definition. It's very common now for them, once somebody's been on disability for about a year, to get everybody who's on disability to apply for CPP disability. Even if they intend to cut you off, they'll still get you to apply for CPP disability just as a precaution. So that is something that you should expect as well. A push for vocational vocational services and things are also going to be warning signs that you are they're kind of preparing for the change of definition. Now, it doesn't mean none of these things mean that you're necessarily going to be denied. In some cases, the evidence that they're collecting can work to your advantage. The most important thing for you is to participate in whatever they're proposing, because that is typically a condition of your insurance policy. Okay, so the outcomes. What can happen at the change of definition? There's really just two outcomes here. One outcome is that you will be approved. And if you are approved, you would move to the maintenance phase of your long-term disability claim. We'll talk about more about that here in a bit. The second thing is if you are denied, the denials aren't really always, they're not going to say that you're faking your injury. They're just going to say that there is now a new legal standard. And while they agree that your disability prevents you from doing your regular occupation, they feel like you do have residual abilities. Your abilities that you have would enable you to do other roles, other jobs where you could earn whatever the income threshold is for your policy. So another example we had is I helped someone who was denied at the 2-year mark. The insurer said the person's fibromyalgia wasn't severe enough. And the doctor's notes really didn't describe the fatigue that well and how fatigue impacted day-to-day function. They were much more focused on like physical capacities. Like this person, they had decent physical capacities, but the fatigue was what was really the disabling. That's what really caused the disability because of inability to concentrate, stay focused, that type of thing. We had to get that clarified through an occupational therapy report. And during the appeals process, and I think it actually led into litigation, that case was eventually had a successful outcome, but mostly because of the evidence from the occupational therapist on the impact of the fatigue. Because the problem with fibromyalgia is sometimes when fatigue or chronic pain are the limiting factors, people can still have fairly decent physical abilities. And also when they're not in the throes of a really bad fatigue, they can also be high functioning as well. So those are difficult cases. And often the best thing to do is try to focus evidence on proving the impact of the fatigue. Now, if you are denied, you may have to, like when you're denied at the change of definition, probably about 95% of the time, you will have to just move on to litigation. 5% of the time, you don't have to. Those are situations if you're denied and there is like the insurance company's waiting on information or there's something key is missing, some key information is missing that really changes things up. That is not most cases. Most cases, the insurer will have all the information. They'll have their own expert reports. They're not waiting on anything. So when they make a choice to deny you at the change of definition, they're kind of locked in because they've already paid for their experts. They've got their ducks in a row and they are ready to deny. And if we'll only consider reapproving you if you go on to litigation. Many people will not go on to litigation. They will just try to get back to work. And that's where the insurance company is betting on. If you go on to litigation, that means you file a lawsuit against them. Then they'll reassess it and make differences there. Where you will not have success in most cases is trying to appeal the decision to deny you. So just doing an appeal without suing them is often not going to be successful at the change of definition. I don't want to say never because we have been successful in some of those, but those would be, like I said, those are cases where some key information from the insurance company's point of view is missing and we're able to provide it. And that can cause a change, but that is very rare for that to happen. Most times at the change of definition, you will have to do a lawsuit. All right, let's talk about this maintenance phase. You'll hear that term thrown around. This is the term the insurance industry uses for long-term disability claims that pass over into an approved claim for any occupation. This is a major milestone, but again, it is not, you have to take it case by case. One person's experience will not be the other person's experience. Sometimes you are approved past the change of definition, but the insurance is still actively investigating your claim. Maybe they weren't able to get all the information they wanted in time for the change of definition, so they kind of approved you on kind of a provisional, like temporary basis while they continue to investigate. That happens. Other times they will approve, but they are still not 100% convinced that they're just going to pay you to age 65. So there can be ongoing monitoring. The frequency of that monitoring will be different based on your case and how much they're monitoring your ongoing active treatment. If they feel like some of your active treatment that you're getting right now has the potential for further improvements, they're going to monitor you more closely and maybe send you for more assessments and that kind of thing. It is quite common in these early years and months after the change of definition that the insurance will still continue to get updates from your doctors, and in fact request the clinical records from your doctors so they can kind of watch through and see, are you continuing to get regular treatment? Has there been any mentions in there of improvements or anything like that? So the maintenance phase is more stable in that over time, it will trend towards less and less interactions with the insurance company. But you still don't want to get complacent, because I've represented people who, after 10 years of being in the maintenance phase, their benefits were cut off, and now they're back fighting again. So that I don't want to cause fear for people who like to over worry about it, but I also think you should not just assume that it's going to be clear sailing through to the end. All right. So you still have to, like, even though you're in the maintenance phase, you still have an obligation under the policy to give ongoing proof of disability. That means your doctor, that can mean your doctor filling out an annual report, by a 6-month report. So you still have to give medical information if requested by the insurance company. You also have a legal obligation. If there's any improvements in your medical condition, you are legally supposed to inform the insurance company of any changes in the status. So that is something that they're often trying to look for. The insurance companies during the maintenance phase can also continue to give you questionnaires. Some of them I call like proof of life questionnaires. They just go out every year. You fill them in. They just want to know that you're still alive. You're still getting treatment. They're just getting you to state it. If they send out one of those forms and it doesn't come back, that will trigger an investigation to see, did the person die? What's going on? Are they back to work? So that is why you're going to see these questionnaires kind of go out. And the frequency of those typically are going to be annual, although it's possible you'll get into a situation where you won't hear from the insurance company at all. There's all kinds of scenarios. And sometimes it's just as random as you've fallen through the cracks. The person managing your claims into the maintenance phase is just not that good, or there's all kinds of things where people have very different experiences, so you can't generalize what will happen for everyone. There was a case I had where, out of the blue, after like 10 years or so being on a claim, the person got cut off, and the reason was they had what we discussed was it last week? I think, yeah, last week I talked about the surveillance trap. So that was a person that got caught by the surveillance trap. She was about 10 years on claim. The insurance company had been monitoring her social media. They were watching the medical records, and there were some indications that there were some improvements and things. So they sent her a detailed activity questionnaire. She filled it out. She made some unfortunate statements, which I don't recommend people do, like little over dramatic in my point of view, like I never leave the house. Like, I asked her later, like, why would you say you literally leave the house? So why would you say I never? Well, she's saying, well, I mean, like, I hardly ever go out. I said, you don't say never. Now they just which they did. They planted a surveillance person out there, and they were out there for a week. So she almost never left the house. So it took them 7 days of surveillance, but I think after 4 days, they had her going out, doing some things and coming back. So what she should have said is, I hardly go out. I only go out once or twice a week. But once they had her on surveillance leaving the house, all of a sudden she's now lying because she said, I never leave the house. And the insurance company will treat that literally, like you're trying to say that you're housebound and can't leave the house. Now, that's not what she meant, but that is what she wrote down. So again, you won't always get the benefit of the doubt that you were not accurate in your language. You were talking more in the generality of it. The kind of the spirit of it was that she hardly ever left the house, but that's not what she wrote. Anyway, so that case ended up getting into litigation. I can't remember. I think we did a lump sum settlement in that case, but I can't remember if it was settled or if we ended up getting her back on the benefits. I think it ended up settling. Usually, when there's surveillance and the insurance company feels like they have a strong surveillance case, they are very reluctant to put someone back on a claim. They would rather take that, run that to court, and hopefully use it because it's such a strong. These cases are easily lost if there's any questions of your credibility because so much hinges on your credibility. So if they think their surveillance they have really undercuts your credibility, then they will. You're very difficult to get that claim approved on a settlement. You would have to go to trial and have a judge order them to approve the claim. So most cases like that are going to settle for a lump sum settlement based on the risk assessed by both sides. All right. These are just some other points I wanted to make. So, while it's not common, insurers will occasionally revisit your vocational potential, even in years after the claim starts. Again, it's not common, but they may, again, as part of the questionnaires and things like that, it is something they may look at. If there's been changes in your medical, that's why they will often order your doctor's medical records so they can read in and just see if the doctor's talking about improvements, a new medication. They may want to revisit things. It is not common, but it can happen once you're in. They'll also be monitoring quite carefully in the maintenance period, like, are there any other income that you have coming in? They want to make sure they're applying all the offsets correctly. So if you ever got approved for CPP in the meantime or any other benefit, they're going to be wanting to get those benefits offset from what they pay you. Now, it's tempting to relax, but once you're past the 2 years mark, but again, I don't want people to get complacent. I don't want you to be worried, but claims are still being reviewed and they can do random audits if there are going to be any red flags that they see. Red flags from their point of view are going to be things where what you're saying on these questionnaires doesn't match what your doctor is saying in the medical records. So they're looking for conflicting statements from you. They're also looking for social media. They'll monitor social media to see if what you're describing as your level of activity or disability is incongruent with what is depicted of you on social media. Again, so if you have to be very careful if you're saying things like, I hardly ever go out, or I don't do this hobby anymore, or I can't do, yard work, and you're still doing that to some extent, that is what's going to get you in trouble. Like, they're looking for you to make definitive statements of your abilities, and then if they think by watching your social media, or if they know, like they knew with that woman who said, I never leave the house. I think they said, we got one here. Like, they're like, get the surveillance. Like, so they knew that she literally must leave the house because she wasn't getting home care. So if you're not getting home care, you must be leaving the house pretty much. And so they took advantage of that. Now, the other situations may not be that clear, but just keep that in mind. Vacations, I encourage people to go on vacations, but those are things that are very rife for the insurance company to take advantage of. You still should go on vacations. You just have to be careful about it. Avoid a lot of social media around it. Um, that's what I would recommend. Or if you're doing social media, just make sure the photos don't depict. Some people will just depict themselves online. They don't want other people to know about their disability, so they'll depict themselves in an unrealistic way. And the unfortunate thing of that is the insurance will take it literally, and it can. You don't want to be backpedaling trying to explain how this photo, this doesn't really depict what you were doing. You were more just trying to show that you have like a normal, exciting life and that kind of thing. That doesn't. You don't want to be trying to explain that in a case for long-term disability. All right. Now, there can be random audits. Yeah, that's my other point here. Random audits can happen. Also, changes in people. You may hear nothing from the insurance company for years because the person managing the batch of claims that you were in was just either incompetent or they just weren't doing their job. A new person comes in, or that it's figured out that this person wasn't really monitoring these cases. Like, you were supposed to be getting letters and questionnaires, you weren't getting any because the person managing your claim was just bad. That person could get to go on sick leave or be replaced, and a new person comes in, or a new person gets promoted. A new person could come in, and it could just be like a bull in a china shop, or whatever the phrase is. They can go like, um, they'll just go all over the place, breaking things, monitor that, get information on this, that. So that also, if it just out of the blue, you're feeling like I'm being audited, or it just could be a new change in somebody in charge, and they are auditing everything. Like I said, they're just like a bull charging around, trying to like figure out, like, these cases have not been updated in years. So that is what could be happening. Also, the other thing is, if you have a claims manager who's managing a bunch of these cases that are in maintenance and wasn't keeping up, and they got in trouble, now they can be like trying to like very aggressive to do things because they're in trouble and they're trying to get the information. So that can be a reason why they're being very aggressive with you out of the blue, to making demands on reasonable timelines and that kind of thing. They may be under pressure because they kind of dropped the ball, and now they're trying to get all this stuff together fast, so that they're not going to get in trouble. That can also happen. But sometimes you just won't hear anything. So again, it's all over the map of what you should. There's a whole range of experiences that you could have here. Okay, so most people will stay on claim for years. Just keep that in mind. Um, and even on to retirement. So that is going to be most people. The stuff that I'm talking about, that can happen. You do need to keep it in mind, but most people will just stay on. But success, if you want to know about what it takes to be successful when you're in the maintenance phase, you want to keep doing your treatment. Even if you're not being updated by the insurance company, like, eventually they may request your records going back for a year, like I said. So you want to make sure that your records are going to reflect your ongoing treatment that's appropriate. You just don't want to stop treatments. If your doctor is recommending things, you should be doing them. Even if the insurance isn't monitoring you right now, they could, like I said, get your back records at some point and say, oh, wow, you weren't continuing. You dropped out of physio. You dropped out of this. So you need to make sure you're continuing to protect yourself by doing that. The other thing would be just honest with reporting to the insurer what's going on. If you're in the maintenance phase and you want to try a volunteer activity, if you want to try going back to work, if you want to do any of these kind of things, even vacation, although you don't necessarily have to report the vacation, it is something that you may need to do, depending on your policy. So there's a certain level of being proactive that is an important thing to do when you are even in the maintenance phase. So the vacation one, whether you have to report it or not, again, I'd go by your policy. You don't necessarily have to, but I would still, if I were going on a vacation and I was in the maintenance phase, I would still want to meet with my doctor and have them recorded in their file that we've met about it, and the doctor is saying that it's fine for you to go on this vacation. It won't affect your treatment or anything like that. Like, I'd get that on the record. So if the insurer ever came back and wanted records and things like that, you could put it in there. Sorry, it would be in there already if they came and asked about it. The other thing too is just go back to the letter. If you're in the maintenance phase, there would have been a letter you got when you're going into the maintenance phase from the insurer. Maybe go back and read it. They may have on that letter things that they want you to do now that you're in the maintenance phase. And it might say, like, tell us if you have any new treatment, a new doctor, if you go on a vacation, if you try this, if you do that. See what that list is and just do those things. Maybe, going on vacations is on that list of things. If it is, then you want to be proactive and do it. The worst thing you can do is not be upfront with them and have them discover something. If they discover things, they're way more invested in thinking they've caught you in the act, and they're much more invested in thinking that you might be a liar and that kind of thing. It's harder for them to like put that on you if you're being proactive and putting this stuff out there. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. There may be some, I guess the only other thing, there might be some benefit to educating your doctor about the standard for any occupation. They may not understand that They are very well, your doctor may very well not understand that you can qualify for disability as long as you're not capable of earning 60,000 a year, whatever it is for you. That often will be news to your doctor because they will be thinking that totally disabled. They will think maybe it's like CPP disability, where you basically the income threshold for CPP disability total disability is like 20,000. They may be thinking of it like the disability tax credit, which is even a higher level of disability. That's important for your doctor to understand so that they can support you properly at that phase, because they just may have a wrong definition of what it takes to be approved for any occupation. So we're at pretty much at the end here. So if you do get denied at the change of definition, review it carefully and see the reasons. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, you will just have to go to litigation or go back to work. But if you think you've been wrongfully denied, you will probably have to go to litigation and get strong medical evidence. In the course of the litigation, though, you can have these cases approved again, or you can opt to settle them out on a lump sum. That's your choice. There's pros and cons of each approach, and that's something you'd want to discuss with you and your lawyer. So consider getting a lawyer. Also, that you're going to have to get good medical evidence, functional assessments, and these kind of things are often necessary at that phase to be successful. Okay, that's pretty much it. I'm at the end. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to shut the presentation down. Like I said, put your questions in the comments. It looks like I have a few in there. And also, we'll answer them here live on the air. And if you're watching this video afterwards, just put the comments down in the bottom of the YouTube video here, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to you to answer those. Last, if you want help, there's 2 levels of help we can give. The first is you can just go down to the description below and the video description, and there'll be a link there where you can download a copy of my book on how to win your long-term disability case. That's a good resource for you to get. The other thing is you can contact our office for a free consultation, and we can review your situation and hopefully give you some advice. All right, with that, I will see you next time. Okay, folks, that's the end of the presentation. Let's get into our live Q&A. Let's see what we have here. This person wants to know, is there a 2-year mark for provincial disability? There is not, as far as I'm aware. No, they have a single standard. So with them, you're always in kind of the any occupation phase. That's the only phase they have. So they're always focused on whether you can do any type of work, not just the work you're in. What's wrong with leaving the house? My case manager keeps asking me if I leave my house. There is nothing wrong with leaving the house. But if you have any type of mental illness, leaving the house is like an important part of your treatment and trying to overcome where you're at. Like, it's often part of the treatment plan. If you have depression or anxiety, is leaving the house gradually for greater and greater periods and going to more intimidating environments is often like a part of treatment. The other thing they may be asking that is they may know that your doctors have recommended that you leave the house and do things, and they're just trying to see if you're following medical recommendations, possibly. I don't know that that's the case with you, but that could be also what's going on. But yeah, so there's nothing wrong. It's encouraged for just about everyone to try to leave the house for sure. So here's another question about, does this all apply to WCB Alberta as well, or is it different? I have depression and PTSD. Does WCB do surveillance? Okay. So no, this does not apply to WCB. WCB always has, no, actually, sorry, it sort of does apply to WCB. WCB does have a similar, yes. Alberta, I'd have to read it, but WCB has a similar idea that for a certain period of time, they will cover you. It's more that WCB is always focused on your own job, but they give you almost a 2-year period as well to try to get back to your own job. After that, they will, if you're not recovered within 2 years on workers' comp, it's usually around 2 years. If you're not recovered to the point where you can return to your own job, they will reassess you as having a permanent disability. And then they will hold you to a standard of what other work can you do with that level of disability. So there's a very similar thing with workers' comp. Does WCB do with surveillance? They will do surveillance, yes. It's not as common as you see with insurance companies, but workers' comp will do surveillance if, particularly if someone has given them information to kind of rat you out type of deal, or somebody is telling them that so and so is getting workers' comp and I'm seeing them doing all these things. They're working a job, they're shingling roofs or whatever. Like if there's some kind of thing like that going on, then they will definitely do surveillance, but they will not just do it out of the blue like insurance companies will. What happens with the relationship with the employer after being approved? Okay, that's a great question. So when you were approved, so this question wants to know like what happens with your employment when you move from into the any occupation phase? This is a good question. When you get to that point, the insurance company will send a letter to your doctor or send a letter to your employer informing them that you have been improved into the any occupation period and which could extend to age 65, something like that. When you get a letter confirming that you've been approved, they will send a similar letter to your employer. Now, how your employer reacts will depend on the employer, but some employers will take that as a sign that they can now have a good evidence. They would be able to build a case for evidence that they can terminate you for frustration of contract because you're medically unable to return to work. That's what they need to, if you're a non-unionized worker, that's what they need in order to terminate your employment. Some employers do that, some don't. It really depends on the employer. Some employers will allow you to continue on employment, but many will take this as an opportunity to terminate the employment. In fact, like federal workers, the federal government is quite aggressive. When you get to the 2-year point, they will send you a letter basically giving you 3 options. You can return to work, you can retire, or you can medically retire type of thing. So like they don't give you any options. Like they don't allow you to just continue on as an employee. You either have to go on medical retirement or return to work or resign, basically. So most people who are who are federal government workers who are approved into the any occupation will typically apply for medical retirement, which is tough because maybe you're going into any occupation, but you're thinking I might not be off completely forever. Maybe I only need another year. If that's your situation, you can fight back and try to avoid going on medical retirement, but you would need to have good evidence from your doctor that there is something on the horizon that may allow you to get back into the workforce. And I have seen exceptions been made there. Does PWD, which stands for Persons with Disabilities, I believe that is in British Columbia, do they do surveillance? Again, the answer would be potentially yes, but they don't have big budgets for it. But potentially yes, they do different types of investigations. Most of these agencies, these provincial agencies, will have investigation units, but they're just not resourced very well. So, but they can do surveillance. Yes, it's not a common thing. It's not like insurance companies who can do it all the time, have a budget for it. If you're talking like CPP disability, provincial disability, workers' comp, they have lower budgets for this, but they will do it, especially if they've had somebody calling them, ratting you out, or saying negative things about you. That's when they'll do it. Whew. A lot of talking here. Anything else, folks? If not, I'm going to call it an afternoon, I think. Give it another second, see if people have anything else. Okay, say tomorrow you can join me to talk about. Wrong one. Tomorrow you can join me to talk about the difference between contractors and employees, independent contractors. I don't know if that applies to anyone here or not, but that is an important thing because you don't have protections as an independent contractor that you would have as an employee. But sometimes the employer may be calling you an independent contractor, but you are actually an employee. So there's a bunch of things I'd like to discuss with people about that. Here, I just brought up here's a copy of my book. You can order this by just going down below and clicking on the link. Once you do that, you'll get emailed a PDF copy of my book. You'll also have the opportunity to order it a paperback copy as well. It'll be in the email. We send those out to people who are dealing with their own long-term disability case. If you have anyone you know that needs help, you can also always refer them to get the book. The book is a good, easy step for people to take if they're not ready to talk to a lawyer. They're in the middle of managing their own case or thinking they have one for long-term disability. I would really recommend this book. It covers everything from before you leave work right up until after approval. There's sections in here on what happens after the change of definition, what we talked about today. So it covers broadly everything you need to know to help give yourself the best chance of success to win your long-term disability claim and keep benefits once they're approved. I go over 11 mistakes. These are the most common mistakes that I've seen people make over the years. So I go over those and give the solution of either how to avoid them or, God forbid, how to try to fix them if you've already made that mistake. All right. That's it for today. I thank everyone for showing up. We've got a large group here today, and we'll be back tomorrow talking about employment. After my employment presentation, I will be taking any kind of questions. So if you have any type of question, I'll be back here tomorrow for that. I wish you guys all the best. Take care.